My GP told me my cholesterol was fine. My good cholesterol, HDL, had been quietly falling for 11 years. Nobody flagged it. Total cholesterol looked manageable on the tablet, so that was the number everyone watched. HDL just kept drifting the wrong way underneath it, and I didn't have a clue. 13 years of NHS blood tests, mine, one person, properly tracked. What turned that HDL number around wasn't the statin. It was something I started doing with my back, not my mouth. I'll show you the actual numbers. So here's the bit that took me embarrassingly long to notice. Every time I had bloods done, the letter said the same thing. Total cholesterol, high. Statin dose, unchanged. GP, happy enough. Moving on. That was the entire conversation, most years. 2012, HDL 1.6, reasonable. 2016, HDL 1.51, still fine. By 2023, 11 years on the tablet, same dose, HDL had dropped to 1.3. Nobody mentioned it. Not because anyone was hiding anything. Total cholesterol was the headline number, and total cholesterol was under control. HDL was just sat underneath it, sliding. I'm not a cardiologist. I didn't know HDL and total cholesterol could move in completely different directions while you're medicated for the same thing. Turns out they can, and for 11 years, mine did. HDL 1.6, statins hadn't started yet. That was still a couple of years off, but it's the baseline, HDL 1.51. Statins are on board by now. Small drop, nothing dramatic, the kind of number you wouldn't blink at if someone showed you. HDL 1.3, 11 years on statins, and by the numbers, worse off than I was before I started. March 24, 1 month off the statin, I'm sat across from my GP, genuinely a bit nervous. I'd stopped the medication myself on my own initiative and only told him once I had a test to bring in. He opens the results. Total cholesterol was down from 8 to 7. LDL was down. Triglycerides were down. He looks up and says, and this is more or less word for word, your lipids are better now than when you were medicated. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But that visit wasn't actually about HDL. Total cholesterol was the headline that day too. HDL didn't get its moment until later. And this wasn't a single test light bulb thing. I want to be honest about that. It came out of going back through the whole run of numbers with, well, the AI used to help me actually see my own data set properly. Session after session, looking at years side by side rather than one printout at a time. That's when the HDL line, on its own, isolated from anything else, started looking like a completely different story to the cholesterol line. April 25, HDL back up to 1.5, ratio down to 4.7, inside target for the first time in years, 14 months off the statin. And here's the thing that actually mattered. I hadn't changed my training at all. Resistance training, 2-3 times a week. Kettlebells, body weight, progressive overload. I'd been doing that for over a year now. It wasn't a new thing. It was already there. I just hadn't connected it to the number. Something Neil McCartney and Stuart Phillips have written about stuck with me once I saw that. They point out resistance training is now standard cardiac rehab, not something GPs avoid after a heart event anymore, but something actively prescribed. It improves strength, endurance, quality of life, often about as effectively as drug treatment does. If it's doing that much work in a rehab setting, it's not a stretch that it was doing something to my HDL the whole 11 years, quietly. Underneath the number, nobody was watching. Think of HDL like the volume of bin lorries on your street, rather than how full any one bin looks. Total cholesterol is the bin. How much rubbish is sitting there? HDL is the collection service. How much is actually getting taken away? You can have a tidy looking bin and still have hardly any collections running. That's what 11 years on statins looked like for me. The bin looked fine. The lorries had basically just stopped turning up. 6 medications, statins, gout pills, asthma inhalers, allergy tablets, the lot. I stopped all of them myself in February 24, not because a YouTuber told me to, but because I'd had enough, and I told my GP afterwards once the blood test backed me up. If documenting that kind of thing properly sounds worth following, subscribe. So what actually moved the number wasn't the pill. It was the training and the lifestyle improvements that I'd already been doing, that nobody, including me, had connected to that specific bit of the blood work. In my case, this seemed to matter more than I'd assumed at the time. I can't say it would happen for everyone on a statin who lifts weights. One person, 13 years, one lipid panel at a time. What it suggested to me was that cholesterol under control and HDL under control aren't automatically the same claim, even when they're sat on the same printout. My GP's take when I eventually brought this specific angle to him, rather than just the headline numbers, he hadn't been trained to flag HDL trajectory the way he'd flagged total cholesterol. Not a criticism, just how the system is built. The number that gets watched is the number that gets discussed. What I'd do differently, I'd have asked for the HDL trend specifically, every single test, instead of only hearing about the top line number. 11 years is a long time for a downward line to sit unremarked in a file nobody's cross-referencing. Something to watch for. If you're already on a statin, if you've got years of blood tests sitting in an NHS folder somewhere, it might be worth asking your GP to pull the HDL line out on its own, across the whole run, not just this year's snapshot, not a diagnosis, just a different question to ask at the same appointment that you're already having. If you're not on anything yet, but you've started lifting or doing some kind of resistance work and you're curious what it's actually doing under the surface, this is the sort of thing that might be worth tracking from the start, rather than working it out backwards 11 years later, like I did. Not a warning, just a thing worth being curious about before the appointment, where someone hands you a tablet as the whole answer. If you want to start tracking your own patterns rather than just collecting results in a drawer, there's a tracker template and the link's in the description. Educational content only, it's not medical advice. Please do speak to your GP before changing your fasting pattern, diet or medication.